Okay, so you've already watched Ryan Trahan's 50 in 50 series on YouTube, and now you're wondering, what should I watch now? Well, I've got some suggestions. Hi there, Jennifer here from the Vintage Century Idle Hour podcast. Now, if you've never heard of that podcast, you're not alone. Millions are right there with you. But I am the host of that show, and basically Vintage Century Idle Hour is kind of a variety show. That's how I describe it anyway, because I cover a variety of random topics on that show, but in every episode, there is one thing that we do that ties everything together, and that is we explore a film from Hollywood's golden age. I'm kind of on this personal quest. I am trying to work my way through all the classics. You know, those films that everybody knows, that the critics seem to love, that you've heard about for years and years. Well, I have been hearing about those movies all my life, and I decided, you know what, Jennifer? It's time for you to watch them. So that's what the podcast is all about. I kind of talk about these movies. I share my assessments of them. I am not a movie expert, although I am learning an awful lot along the way. So that's kind of fun. But I'm not an expert. I'm just an enthusiast. But I share what I discover on the podcast. Well, I'm on hiatus right now because just like everybody else, I am enjoying my summer, and yes, I am also watching the Ryan Trahan 50 in 50 series. It's so good, isn't it? That channel is so entertaining. Honestly, you should be watching that instead of this. But anyway, you're here and I'm thrilled. So what I wanted to do though in this video, why I am popping on here in the middle of summer, because I don't start the podcast up again until August. But the reason why I wanted to come on is because I have put my list of movies together for season 2. So season 2 of the Vintage Century Idle Hour starts in August. And I've decided to rectify a major mistake that I made in season 1. You know, I'm not a professional podcaster. I don't know what I'm doing most of the time. And by the way, as an aside, that goes doubly for video. I've tried to make this video 5 times. Every time it's just cringeworthy and I hate it. But I've decided to lean into the cringe and, you know, it's just got to be done. So here we are. But a big mistake that I made in season 1 was that I didn't give the listeners an opportunity to watch the films before I talked about them. And I think that's honestly a better way to listen to my podcast. You know, I think it would be much more fun to have engagement and actually talk about things that we have experienced at the same time. So while I'm watching movies, if you're watching those same movies, then we can engage. And I didn't give anybody a chance to do that. So I would come out with an episode and, you know, that would be the first time anybody heard about the movie that I was going to be talking about. So I decided this time around, I was going to come out with my list for season 2 in advance. And you know, summer's a great time to just kind of be lazy and watch movies, but you may not know what movies to watch. So that's why, you know, I thought this list would be great for the summer, give you some ideas of some titles maybe you've never heard of, or maybe you're not even into old movies, but you want something different. Well, you may find something on my list. Now, the other benefit of doing this is, you know, I'm not famous, but if I was famous, I would be famous for spoilers. Yeah, I'm the spoiler queen. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be the person who ruins everybody's good time because I give away major plot points and the ending of these stories. Yeah, I don't want to be that person, but I am that person. And so on the Vintage Century Idle Hour podcast, I'm giving away plot points left and right. Now, I do give warnings. Every episode has a spoiler alert. And I also urge people to stop the episode, go watch the movie, and then come back so I can talk about it. We, you know, me and listener both know what the plot is and we can sort of engage that way. But nobody's going to do that. I don't even do that. When I'm listening to a podcast, I don't say, oh, let me stop, go do this thing that the podcaster is talking about, and then I'll come back. I mean, no, you know, life is too busy and our attention spans are just too short. We're not going to do that. I wouldn't do it. I can't expect the listeners to do it on my show either. So for all of those reasons, I've decided to come out with my list. So I've got 25 films on the list, and I've tried to be very careful in my selections. I've tried to choose titles that span different genres, different decades. So on the Vintage Century Idol Hour, I cover films in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. My cutoff is 1960. And, you know, I do have some titles on my master list from the 1920s, but so far we haven't covered any of those. I'm not as interested in those, to be honest. It's really the 30s, 40s, and 50s that I'm most interested in. So I've tried to choose films that span those decades, you know, and it's kind of fun to do it that way too, because the style from the 1930s is much different than the style of the late 1950s. And so we kind of get to see that progression as, you know, we take a look at these different films. Okay, so without more further ado, let's go to my list. Now, I put all of my film things in Notion. Now, if you're not familiar with Notion, it is basically database program where you can create your own databases. I use the free version. There is an upgrade. I'm not sure what the difference is because the free version really meets all my needs, but I'm still kind of learning Notion. I'm very whipped up about it. So don't mistake my enthusiasm for Notion as some sort of sponsorship deal, because I have no following whatsoever. Okay, so there are no sponsors, including Notion. They have no idea who I am. I just kind of like the tool, and it's very easy to put together. Not only can you store information in there about hobbies, or a lot of people use it to plan their days and their tasks and projects and that kind of thing, but you can do it in a visually appealing way, which is, you know, even better. I like that even better. All right, so I'm going to show off my little Notion page with you, and that's going to contain not only the list, but a few other things as well. So I thought I would show you my master list, which is how I organize the big list. You know, I started with 70 titles on that list. I expanded it. In fact, I just added a couple of titles this week. So it continues to grow. I think I'm just under 300 titles now on the master list. So that's the big list. But then I also have the smaller season 2 list, and that's the one that I want to go over in just a little bit more detail. So if you're looking for some movies to watch, that little season 2 list is a good place to start. Okay, let's take a look at my Notion space. And here it is. So we've got the films, that's where the lists are, the master list and also the season 2 list. I also have a lobby art gallery. And so what I've done there is I've gone out, I've found all the lobby posters. You know, the posters that would be shown in theaters as movies were released, or maybe to announce coming attractions. Okay, I've put all of the movie posters or the lobby art for the season 2 films in this gallery. And by the way, all of these are searchable, so it's very handy. I'll show both of these areas, the films and the lobby art gallery momentarily, but just a couple of other things that I have on here. I've got a section that I'm calling Learn Your Lines, and this is essentially lines from films that I've written down. So I keep a notebook. As I am watching each film, I'm taking notes in my notebook, and a lot of the notes that I'm taking involve dialogue, because I'm very fascinated with the narrative structure of the films, and also what the characters are saying. That's a big part of it for me. So if there is a particularly memorable line or something I think is interesting, something I want to explore further somewhere down the line, I will place it in this Learn Your Lines database. I'm not going to really go into that right now. That may be a future video. We can kind of take a look at some of those. But for now, we'll just move on to 1,000 Beautiful Things. This has nothing to do with Hollywood or classic films or any of that. This is actually part of another hobby. Listen, I have a lot of interests. Films are not just the only thing that I'm into. I have a lot of hobbies. And so my notion space is going to continue to expand to include those other things as well. We're going to leave that section for now. No reason to dig deeper in there. But let's go to the film section. Now I've got two links here. I've got one to my master film list, and I actually didn't put the master film list in Notion. I just linked to it. I actually have used Google Sheets for that. Because it just was easier to work with and it would do the things that I wanted it to do. And then I've got my Vintage Century Idle Hour Season 2 watch list. That is a little database in Notion. So that, again, is the whittled down version. Those are just the 25, or maybe it's 25 or 26 films that we're going to be covering in Season 2 of the podcast. But let's go out to my master film list so you can get a little flavor for how I've got this organized. So again, this is Google Sheets, and I've got my check boxes here that I can check off when I've watched these films. Now you can see that I don't have a lot of these checked. Yeah, I have a lot of work to do. I've got a few of them checked, but not that many, honestly. Okay, and then I've got the film title. I've got the year that those films were released. I have the genre categories, and there's lots of different ways that you can categorize these films. The way I've chosen to do it is split it up into just a handful of genre categories. So I've got drama, history and biography, noir thriller, comedy / musical. And honestly, if I kind of had things to do over again, I wouldn't have smashed these two together, because there are a lot of musicals that are not comedies, and even more comedies that are not musicals. So I'm not exactly sure why I smashed these two together. I did that a long time ago and I just never separated them. So I'm continuing to call that one genre category, but I don't know, that may not make a lot of sense. And then we've got adventure, not as many adventure films on this list. And then finally, my last category is sci-fi fantasy. I love sci-fi fantasy, but there's not a whole lot of them on this list. Probably my favorite genre is drama, and that is where most of these films fall. All right, now I move into the accolades section. So if a film has been inducted into the Library of Congress National Film Registry, I will indicate that here. But what I've done in the Academy Award wins column is I'll indicate if it won an Academy Award, and I'll also indicate if a film was nominated but didn't win anything. So I don't have all the nominations listed. Then we have a column for the VCIH rating, and that is my rating. That's Vintage Century Idle Hour rating. And I basically have just 3 grades, 3 categories of assessment that I use: unwatchable, watchable, and rewatchable. And then I also include the color process here. I have a strong preference for black and white films. I'm not exactly sure why. Somebody asked me why the other day, and I don't know, maybe it's because the black and white films sort of take you away from reality, maybe a little bit more than a color film does. I don't know, but I just like black and white a lot. Now, in season 1, all the films were black and white. In season 2, we do have a couple of color films. We're branching out. We're getting brave as we enter into season 2. I'm getting a little bit more confident and, a little bit more willing to try new things. So we are branching out into color films. Okay, so let's go back now to my notion, and we're going to take a look at the season 2 films, but I'm not going to just go over it in list form. Let's look at it through that lobby art gallery section, because I have organized all the posters into the sequence in which we will be covering them in season 2. So they're primarily in year order, and I think that'll be fun, because not only do the styles of films change over the course of those decades, 30s, 40s, and 50s, but so does the poster art. So you can kind of see how the graphic design evolves over those decades as well. I have an interest in graphic design as well as movies, so I don't know, I think it's just kind of fun to look at the posters that way. All right, now to the poster gallery. Okay, so here we are, Lobby Art Gallery. Let's click on that, and this is kind of a big reveal. Ta-da! The season 2 films. All right, now look at these, how beautiful they are. Aren't they just amazing? I mean, you could frame these and hang them on your wall. They're so much fun to look at. Okay, so we're going to start with the 1930s, Top Hat, 1935. That's actually our first musical that we're covering in the Idle Hour. And, I'm not a big musical fan, but I'll tell you something about Top Hat. I'm not going to go over details about that film. We'll cover that in episode 1 of season 2. But I'll tell you one thing about Top Hat. It's got some really amazing songs. If you're an Irving Berlin fan, this is the film for you. I was actually more familiar with those songs than I was the movie. I knew the songs before I knew there was even a movie called Top Hat. So Ginger Rogers, Fred Astaire, you can't beat those two. But anyway, that's how we're going to kick off season 2. Then we move on to 1937's Stage Door. A Star is Born from 1937 as well. So Stage Door 1937, A Star is Born from 1937. Now, A Star is Born, as I'm sure everyone knows, has been remade at least 3 times. And we're going to look at the original. Okay, so that was 1937. Now we move to 1938, Four Daughters. The Women from 1939. I'm kind of interested in this one because it stars Joan Crawford, and honestly, I have just kind of this weird fascination with her. No Wire Hangers, that movie star, that Joan Crawford. I don't know if I would have liked her as a friend. She's not a person I necessarily would want to hang out with. But I'll tell you something, she was a hard worker. I read a biography of Joan Crawford last summer, well, actually last fall when I was on vacation, and it was really fascinating. And she was a hard worker. And there's something about her that I kind of admire. Is she a paragon of virtue? No, but I'm fascinated by her nonetheless. Okay, but in The Women, she stars in that film with Norma Shearer. And apparently those two did not get along so well in real life, which kind of works well with The Women because it's my understanding they don't get along in that film either. I think they're adversaries in that story. We shall find out. But anyway, that'll be a good one from 1939. All right, How Green Was My Valley from 1941. I've been wanting to see that one for a long time. And finally, we're going to do it. The Magnificent Ambersons, also from 1941. Laura from 1944. I've actually seen this one. It's a good one. It's a little bit strange, but I like this film because, first of all, Jean Tierney is in it, and she is so beautiful. I mean, what a beautiful actress she was. But the other reason why I'm kind of fascinated by her is she is tied in a very interesting way to the town where I grew up, Topeka, Kansas. We'll get into all of that when we cover Laura, but you know, it's kind of an interesting story. Not so much a happy story, but definitely an interesting story about how she ties to Topeka. All right, then we move on to 1944's Double Indemnity and Going My Way. In 1945, we have our first British entry into the Idle Hour lineup, and it's Brief Encounter. I've seen this one. It is outstanding. This is so good, and there's so much to talk about with this film that I actually had a big, long conversation. I think it was like 2 hours long with my sister, and then my brother-in-law also got on the line, and we're having this big, in-depth conversation about this film. And so, I can't wait to get to that one. It's going to be good. All right, also from 1945, we've got The Lost Weekend. And then in 1948, we've got our first color film in the series, Alfred Hitchcock's Rope. Now, this will be our second Alfred Hitchcock film. In season 1, we covered Psycho from 1960. Now we're going all the way back to 1948, and I'm really intrigued by this one because this is inspired by a real-life murder that had taken place early in the 20th century, and I know about that murder. It's creepy as all get out, so I'm very curious as to how that's treated in Alfred Hitchcock's film. And Alfred Hitchcock is just always fun, so can't wait for that one. Now we go to 1949 and A Letter to Three Wives. And then we jump all the way to 1953 for what I believe is our second color film in this series, Shane. I mean, I know Shane is a color film. I think Rope was our first color film, and now Shane is our second. This is another one that I've been wanting to see for a long time. If you tuned into season 1, you know that I am not a fan of Westerns. At least I didn't think I was a fan of Westerns until I saw the Oxbow Incident, which was my favorite film of season 1, and that is a Western. So surprise, surprise. All right, then we move to 1950's A Lonely Place. Ooh, I got these out of order, didn't I? Not sure how that happened, but anyway, okay, so now we're back to 1950 in A Lonely Place. That stars Humphrey Bogart. That's a film noir. It's not as well known as his Maltese Falcon or Casablanca, of course, but it should be a pretty good one. Then from 1951, we've got A Place in the Sun. Back to 1953 now, we've got War of the Worlds because, of course, that is such a fun film. I love War of the Worlds. I've seen it before. I think everybody's seen it before, but it's just a fun one, so we got to talk about it. All right, then from 1954, we've got a film that, I don't know, it's got to be on our list, okay? It's in the canon. It makes it onto just about every best films ever made list that I could find. But I don't know if I'm going to really like this film for a couple of reasons. One, well, the primary reason is the subject matter. You know, I think it's about a union, some sort of union uprising or something, or upheaval, or I don't know, it's about people working on the waterfront. That just is not a storyline that intrigues me. But sometimes, you know, when you do a project like this, you make discoveries. And I'm going to go into that one with an open mind. Marlon Brando stars in that film, and he was at the peak of his acting ability. I don't know if it's acting ability, but certainly at the peak of his acting career in On the Waterfront. So we got to watch it. We got to do it. Okay, moving on. 1958, The Country Girl with Grace Kelly. Then also from 1958, Vertigo, and another film from 1958. Okay, we have to talk about this one. The Goddess. I did not know about this film. I just added it to the list yesterday, but I am intrigued. So I just recently finished a book about method acting. And, one of the things that kept coming up in that book is this actress, Kim Stanley. Have you heard of Kim Stanley? I've never heard of Kim Stanley, and I've certainly never seen any films that I can recall that she's starred in, but she's supposed to be one of the finest actresses of the 20th century. Now, she didn't make a lot of films. Apparently, she didn't like filmmaking for a variety of reasons. She really preferred the stage. So that's where most of her work was done. But she did make this film called The Goddess. And I'm intrigued. I want to see what the best acting of the 20th century looks like, don't you? Now, she did not win an Academy Award for this, nor did she win any Academy Awards. I don't even know if she was nominated for an Academy Award. So we shall see how good of an actress she is. Now, there's another thing about The Goddess that I think is really intriguing. Okay, I'm going to go back to, let's go back to the poster here and blow it up a little bit. Okay, so here she is. What this film is supposed to be is a very thinly veiled biography of Marilyn Monroe. Now, it's fictionalized, okay, so this isn't completely factual, but apparently it's kind of obvious that Marilyn Monroe was the inspiration for this film. Now, let's remember that this came out in 1958. Marilyn Monroe was still alive. And as far as I can tell, this is not the most flattering depiction of her. So, interesting. I cannot wait to see this one. Because it's from 1958, we're going to be covering it later in the season. I almost wish we could start with this one because I'm so intrigued, but I do think there's value in, covering these films from the year in which they were released. So we're going to continue down that path. Okay, now having said that, here comes a little bit of a departure from that plan. These last 4 films we're not going to necessarily do in order of release date because I thought when October rolls around for Halloween, we're going to want to do some fun, scary movies, right? And then for Christmas, of course, we have to do some fun Christmas films. So these 4 are going to be a little bit out of sequence. For October, we have I Bury the Living from 1958. I have not seen this film, but it's supposed to be kind of Twilight Zone-y. And, if you have tuned in at all to season 1 episodes of The Idle Hour, you know that I love the Twilight Zone. Now, Rod Serling has nothing to do with I Bury the Living. It's not a Twilight Zone episode per se, but it has, I guess, kind of a weird plot twisty kind of thing. And I'm intrigued. We have to do it. Okay, and then we have Village of the Damned from 1960. Now, this has to win a prize for the best movie poster. Look at this thing. That kid is the creepiest kid that has ever been born. Beware the stare that will paralyze the will of the world. Village of the Damned. Okay, so we're going to watch this one. Not really critically acclaimed. I have seen this film before, but it's just so much fun. I just think this is a perfect film for us to cover in October. So, it's on the list. And how can you resist this incredible poster? Beware the stare. All right, and that brings us to our 2 Christmas films, The Shop Around the Corner from 1940, and of course, Miracle on 34th Street from 1947, probably my favorite of all the classic Christmas films. If you tune in to season 2 of the Idle Hour podcast, there's no requirement that you watch these films in advance, okay? I think it would be more fun if you watch these films in advance, but it's not a requirement. if all you want to do is tune into the podcast and hear me kind of jabbering on in the background while you're cleaning or commuting, or you're at work and you're watching the clock, or, whatever, that's okay too. But if you want to watch the films, you want a little bit of a head start, let's take a look very quickly at those top 10, those first 10 movies that we're going to be watching. All right, so Top Hat, Stage Door, A Star is Born, Four Daughters, The Women, How Green Was My Valley, The Magnificent Ambersons, Laura, Double Indemnity, and Going My Way. That should give you a pretty good start on these films, and then we'll have plenty of time to cover all of the others on this list. Okay, well, that's it. That's my list of the films we're going to be covering on Season 2. Season 2 will begin the first week in August. I usually release those episodes on Fridays. Now, fair warning, if you are new to the Idle Hour, those podcasts are audio only. So while you can find them on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, Vintage Century Idle Hour, and you can find them on all the major podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the rest. Just be aware, these are audio-only podcasts. I know sometimes people, they tune in, especially on YouTube, and they're thinking they're going to see some really amazing video, and then they're very disappointed to find out that, no, there really is no amazing video. So this is it. This is as amazing as it gets on my channel. Okay, this what you're watching right now. This is it. This is the pinnacle. So I hope you tune in anyway. Well, hey, have a great rest of your summer. I hope to see you in August on the Vintage Century Idle Hour. So bye for now.